Right, again, you should be on page 33 for section 1.5. If you've got issues with your homework, we can check on that later. You gotta get these notes done right now. One of the other sections, I don't remember if it was 3 or 4, but it was solving equations. This is solving inequalities. Pretty much the same thing with the exception of a few small rules, which I will make sure we cover in depth. Several of the things I'll write up here are nowhere in your book. So you really need to be copying down the notes that are up here so that you'll have them for your homework problems. We're just going to jump right into some examples. On page 34, the first example up there at the top, you have 7x minus 5 is greater than 6x plus 4. Okay, looks pretty much just like an equation, except for the sign in the middle. You treat these just like equations. You're still going to use the inverse operations that you used in whichever section that was, I think the third section. So, you've got x's on both sides. We need to move either the 7 or the 6. Which one's probably the easier? The 6, because it's not going to give you a negative that way. So how do we move the 6x? Subtract it from both sides. 7x minus 6x gives us what? So we have x minus 5 is greater than 4. So what do we need to move now? We got the x on the left side. The 5, how do we do that? Add 5. So we have x is greater than 9. Was that any different than solving a regular equation? No, that one wasn't. Some of them will have a few little differences. One of them being, for inequalities, we're going to make a quick sketch of our answer. We're going to sketch that on a number line. Where are the numbers greater than 9? For my class, really all you need is 0 and whatever number you're graphing. I don't want you to spend 3 days putting all the little dash marks on there and labeling it. Just put 0 and then show me where the number is. So the first rule that I want you to write off to the side somewhere here, if you have greater than or less than, that's an open circle. Greater than or less than, that's an open circle. So when you put that on this line down here, since we have greater than, it's an open circle at 9. That's what this is talking about. If you have the equal to under it, so greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to, then it is a closed circle. Everyone always asks me, how do we know that? That's how you know, right there. So whichever sign you have, that's how you know which circle it should be, open or closed, when you graph. So that's not in your book. It is, but it's a lot more confusing than that is. So make sure you have that written. Are there any questions on that, on how to know which one you have? Okay, it's just whatever this sign is in between. If you got one of these, it's open. If you got the line under, it's closed. And this means it's equal to, which means it can also be 9. That's why you fill in the circle. Now, if you've got the variable on the left side like we do here, then you can shade whichever way the inequality is pointing. That's an easy way to remember. Or you can just know which way is greater than 9. Greater than 9 would be this way, or the way the arrow is pointing. Don't use that rule as far as the arrow if the variable's not on the left. Okay, it doesn't work there. Questions on that? On the open and closed circle? Okay. Example 2, we'll do at the top of page 35. I'll do one similar to that. 12 is greater than or equal to negative 0.3x. Is greater than or equal to negative 0.3x. Are we going to have an open or closed circle on this? Closed. Closed. Very good. Sounds like we're all got that. So we got our x over here. We just have one x in this problem. How do we get that by itself? Exactly. Divide. Make sure you don't try to add that 0.3 because it's negative. What you always have to check is what operation is going on between that number and the x, which is obviously multiply, and that's why you said divide. So we're dividing both sides by negative 0.3. What's that going to give us? Negative 40. So we have x negative 40. What don't we have now? The symbol or the sign in the middle. Who knows why I didn't put the sign up there yet? But you got to flip it. So we are flipping that inequality, opposite of what it was in the original. So why do we do that? Divide it by a negative. So that's rule number 2 that you'll need to have written down. If you multiply or divide by a negative, you must flip the inequality sign. You must flip that sign in the middle. So, for instance, on a test, that sign will be, you'll have this answer, and you'll also have the answer without the sign flipped. Okay? So it's going to be tough, but you've got to remember, if you multiply or divide by a negative, you have to flip the sign. Quick side note, that doesn't mean here we're going to divide by negative 4. Negative 4 on both sides. We divided by a negative, so we have to flip the sign. Okay? And one thing that confuses us is when we have 4x is less than negative 8. Some kids want to flip the sign on that one. It's the number you're dividing by. It's the number that's in the bottom. So on this one, you would not flip the sign. It would stay less than negative 2. It's only if that number you're dividing by or multiplying by is negative. So a quick sketch of this one. Since it's negative, your 0 will be on the other side. And you have negative 40 over here. So which way? It says that x, another side note, I would always change it to where your variable is on the left side. It's going to make it easier on a lot of you. So if you did that, it would be x is greater than or equal to negative 40. Just move the variable over and change the sign again because we moved the variable. Now you can see, you can follow that arrow. It's pointing to the right. You don't have to do that. If you can read that backward, it just says x is greater than negative 40. So is it open or closed? We already said closed. And we are shading which way, to the right or left? To the right. Good. And those are pretty well the only 2 rules or 2 differences, is you got to know that for shading, the open or closed circle, and then the multiplier divide rule. Everything else is pretty much the same as equation.